Good morning to our friends and members of the Westbound Shul. Today is PARSHAS NETZAVIM, the last Parsha before Rosh Hashanah. We're all getting ready for Rosh Hashanah. We're all excited. Baruch Hashem, we've accommodated all our members' reasonable requests. And although we don't have the numbers like we had pre-COVID in Shul, but definitely it's the quality that counts, and everybody will have a most meaningful Rosh Hashanah. Hopefully we'll be able to get the rapid test on Sunday and Monday. We're all double vaccinated, so God willing, there'll be nothing to fear while we're in shul, and we can focus on what the day is all about. The current events of this week, as often is the case, are directly spoken to in this week's Parsha. And in this week's Parsha, we have PARSHAS NETZAVIM. We have the topic of EREV. And before I get into the topic of EREV, I want to start with a little story. And with this story, we'll answer that question. We'll pick up the story towards the end of the DRUSH, which I often do. We know there's a well-known story during the Mendel Bayless trial that was held in Moscow over 100 years ago. And it was a very terrible anti-Semitic show trial. And one of the little sidebars of the story is that the prosecuting attorney accused the Jews of harboring contempt for non-Jews. And he used a Gemara to buttress his position that shows and it demonstrates how superior Jews feel to Gentiles and how they loathe those who are not of their faith. And what Gemara was he referring to? The famous Gemara that says, Atem keruim Adam. You are called an Adam. The Jewish people are called man. Velo akum, and not the non-Jews. Look at that. Only Jews are human. Non-Jews are not human. So obviously Jews don't care about the rest of the world, and therefore Bayless could be a spy, etc., etc. The defense team of Mendel Bayless was in a quandary how to answer the question, because they didn't know anything about the Talmud. They consulted with the Rav of Moscow, who sent a telegram to Reb Meir Shapiro for advice. And that piece of advice can be best understood in light of what we're going to talk about first. And what are we going to talk about? We're talking about the fact when Moshe says to the Jewish people, Atem nitzavim hayom, you are all standing today. And we're standing today, and now he lists the Jewish people, exactly who and what they are. Atem nitzavim hayom, you are standing today before me. Kolchem, Roshechem, Shiftechem, Ziknechem, Vishetrechem, Kol Nasi Yisrael. The tribal heads, the elders, the officials, all the men of Israel, your children, your wives, the ger, the wood chopper, the water carrier, to bring you into a covenant that I'm making today, etc., etc. And that covenant was a covenant of EREV. What does that mean? We know from here, the story, Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh Lo Zeh. Every Jew is Arev, one for another. Loosely translated means responsible. When the Jews crossed the Jordan River, at that point, Moshe is saying, we now are all responsible one for another. And we have to realize that that whatever everybody does impacts all of us. And indeed, not long after Yeshua led the Jews into the land of Israel, the second battle in the city of Ai, they lost the battle because one wayward Jew, Achan, took from the loot of Yericho, which was not allowed, and the Jews all suffered from it. And although he admitted it later, And he even said, I even stole before we came into Israel under Moshe. But you see, the Jews weren't punished at that point. There's an idea of Kol Yisrael Arevim Zelozeh. And the obvious question is, I understand if I see a Jew is doing something wrong and I don't stop him, it shows that I don't care. But Achan did what he did furtively. And therefore, how can you blame the Jews for this? And we have to understand, what does it mean, Arevim Zelozeh? And Rav Moshe Cordovero, in his Sefer Tomer Dvorah, when he explains the fourth of the 13 Midos HaRachamim, based on the prophet Micha, the words Lisheris Nachal Asal, which means the remnant of his heritage. I'm not going to go through the whole piece. It's a beautiful piece. But he says, he's explaining Hashem's attributes, how he lives with us. And when Hashem, even if Hashem is required to discipline us, but he says, you know, the word she'er in biblical Hebrew means a relative. Hashem says, what can I do? They're my relatives. They're my children. They're my family. And therefore, when Hashem has to do something, he says, quote, Im ani shem, if I punish them, harei hakev alai, the punishment, the suffering is for me. And that's why the prophet Yeshaya says, b'chol tzarosam, in all their sufferings of the Jews, it says, lo tzar. Lo tzar, we read Lamed Vav, he suffers. But the writing is, the text says lo with an aleph, which seems to imply there is no suffering. So the standard interpretation is, since Hashem knows what he does is for the good, even though he's suffering that they're suffering, it hurts a parent to discipline a child, but at the end of the day, it's good for them and it's not going to be bad. That's the Litvish pshat. The Kabbalistic pshat says, Rav Moshe Cordovero, the word lo, lamed aleph, means the pain for him is le aleph, to the aleph, which mystically is called the Pele Elyon, the heavenly wonderment. What it means is, b'chol tzarasa, whenever the Jews are suffering, le aleph is the tzar. Hashem's pain goes all the way to the top, all the way to whatever that means mystically. The essential aspect of Hashem is suffering greatly when the Jews suffer. And that means whenever Hashem has to do something for our good, he feels, first of all, whenever we suffer, Hashem feels it exactly how we feel the pain. And if he has to discipline us, it hurts him much more. That expression, it's going to hurt me more than it's going to hurt you, son, is very true over here. And he says, this is the understanding of Kol Yisrael, Arevim Zelozeh, all Jews are Orev for each other. Orev will say responsible, we'll explain a little better in a minute. And that means, why? So he says like this, why? Mipnei shemamish, yesh b'chol echad ve'echad chelek echad mechavero. Everyone has a part of his neighbor. In other words, we're all one block, we're all one piece. There's a little bit of me in all the Jews in the world, a little bit of you in all the Jews in the world, a little bit of Hashem in all the Jews in the world, a little bit of all the Jews in the world in Hashem. When a person sins, don't think he's only sinning for himself. Since we're one integrated block, we all are hurt, regardless if it's our fault or not. That's the way it is. Just like the parts of a body. If the heart gives out, even though the leg didn't do anything wrong, it's going to die. And that's why he concludes the Tomer Dvorah, and therefore everybody should want what's good for his friend and look favorably for his friend, because at the end of the day, your friend is you. And that's the base of Haftarecha Kamocha. And we should only want our friends to be better off. We should want what's best for them, look out for what's best for them, not talk negatively about them. Just like Hashem is in great pain when things are hurting us, because he's so related to us, because it's all one part of one body. And we should all want to help others. This is what happened when the Jews went in Eretz Yisrael. This is the reality. Even though we have different bodies, the reality is we're all one and we have to help each other. We can't ignore each other. And yes, we are EREVim zelazeh, which means to be guarantors one for another. So now the obvious question of the text, what? Because EREV means to be a guarantor. Guarantor means I'm going to make sure he's going to do it. That's why we can make brachas for other people and things like that. So usually, not usually, always, when the bank asks for a guarantor, why are they asking for a guarantor? Because they don't think the guy can pay. So what do? You get somebody who is wealthier to be the guarantor. So that's good. So of the 10 million Jews we have, how many are wealthy? Wealthier, whatever, certain amount. But you can't say that everybody is wealthier than everybody else. Well, Kol Yisrael EREVim zelazeh. Every Jew is a guarantor for another. How can every Jew be a guarantor for another person? I mean, obviously, if one's wealthier than the other, that's it. We're going to say, well, we're not talking about money, we're talking about spiritual wealth. Well, if a bigger tzaddik is a bigger tzaddik than somebody else. So the Balatan, and therefore the pasuk doesn't make sense. We said, Atem NETZAVIM hayom kaim kulchem, we're all together. Who? That's the Canim, the Shoftim, the Shaitrim, and the wood choppers. How's that make sense? The wood chopper is going to be an EREV to the tzaddik. So the Alter Rebbe, the first Lubavitcher Rebbe, says we are in fact all part, as we said, of one singular being. And every physical limb has its advantage. And though the head may be higher than the feet, but the feet can walk while the head can't. And in fact, if we define head as the body's source of energy, we can therefore say that the feet are the head's head when walking is concerned. The hands are the head's head when taking is concerned. Likewise, every Jew has his unique advantage, an area where everyone else acknowledges his superiority. And that is why a spiritual EREV, a simple person, can be motzi a tzaddik, because he may possess something in a more favorable dynamic than the tzaddik has. It doesn't matter. There's certain people can get certain things done. We have all these kinds of stories of tzaddikim who needed to be saved in the Holocaust. And they didn't have the street smarts, the connections to do such a thing. And now what happens? All of a sudden, the simple Jew doesn't know anything, has the right connection, is able to save somebody. So therefore, Kol Yisrael EREVim zelazeh makes a lot of sense. We all have a virtue, and that virtue is able to accomplish for that others that others don't have. And we all have it. And this is the idea of coronating Hashem on Rosh Hashanah. We need everybody to coronate Hashem on Rosh Hashanah. Why? Because each and every one of us has something the other doesn't have. And we all have to be in it together so we can give what the other one is not capable of producing. Because we are all one. And although there could be a time where an Achan will do something and we all will suffer for that, but that's not how it was designed. The Derech Hashem of Moshe Chaim Luzzatto explains the yesod, the foundation of Kol Yisrael EREVim zelazeh is for this. Not every Jew is spiritually superior enough to get into Olam Haba. But since if he connects himself, just connects himself to a tzaddik, because we're all one, the tzaddik can schlep him in. That's the yesod of Kol Yisrael EREVim, that we all will help each other to get to the final goal. But the flip side is also true. When people make a mistake, it's hurtful. This is this week's Parsha. because we're coming into Rosh Hashanah. We got to be very focused on this. We all need merits for Rosh Hashanah. And the greatest merit is to say, I buy into Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh Lezeh, and I'm going to do what I can to use my exceptional spiritual talents in my area to help other people. We all belong together on this Rosh Hashanah to coordinate Hashem with all the exceptional skills that each and every one of us have, not to look down at others, but to help others, speak favorably of others, and to know that on Rosh Hashanah, if Hashem has to make a terrible gzera, it's going to bother him to no end. And he knows, and we know, that if we do proper tshuva, whatever terrible gzeros might be leveled against us, they can be taken away. And you never know in whose merit those things can be taken away. As there's also many famous stories, I'm not going to repeat, with the Baal Shem Tov, who's simple people with simple prayers. Their prayers go elevated much higher than other people's prayers. And with this, we can now understand the answer that Reb Meir Shapiro gave to the chief rabbi of Moscow, who gave it to the defense attorneys, who said it to the prosecuting attorney. He says, Reb Shapiro says that the essential Jewish characteristic is now on display during this very trial in a courtroom in Moscow. Remember, this is way before internet. He says the entire Jewish world is up in arms. Jews across the globe are using all the resources at their disposal to intercede on behalf of the accused Mendel Bayless. That's why Atem, you in the plural, Kiruim Adam, are called Adam in the singular. One man, one organic whole. We feel the pain of one another, and we're willing to sacrifice for each other in a way that no people has ever demonstrated. That's the answer. We are Adam. The non-Jews are not Adam. And I know our liberal-minded friends will say, how dare you say that? How dare you say that? The United States had the most successful rescue operation in the history of the world. Over 100,000 people were rescued. Certainly, the people in Washington are Adam. Well, that's if you read the fake news. But if you know the emes, you know that's not so. Did you ever ask who are all those people that they took out? We know for a fact there are hundreds, if not thousands, foreign nationals, Americans in Afghanistan that are not able to get out. There's a couple dozen school children who went on summer vacation. They can't get out. There's a number of Americans who want to get out, cannot get out. There are a lot of interpreters, Afghan interpreters, who risk their lives for America. They cannot get out. I mean, they got many Americans out, but certain ones they didn't get out. And they violated one of the greatest principles of the Marines, that no man is left behind. In this parsha, Hashem tells us very clearly that when the Jewish people attempt to do some kind of tshuva at all, what does it say? It says, Hashem, your God, will restore your fortunes and take you back in love. He will bring you together again from all the peoples where Hashem has scattered you. Even if your outcasts are at the end of the world. From there Hashem will gather you and fetch you. And he will bring you to this land. Hashem says no Jew is going to be left behind, because we're all one. And it causes me great sadness to see that a Jew is not back. And in a sense, the Marines had to say, no Marine is left behind. It's not necessarily so true, but we know in Eretz Yisrael that's true. They make all their defense equipment in a way that if there's chasom, a bombing, that it's easier for them to get out. But there are Americans, many have been left behind. So what about why did they say it was such a success? Well, you want to know who the most, over 100,000 people are? Undocumented Afghanis, refugees. They don't even know who they are. They broke all protocols. We say, well, because they care about all these Afghan people. Now, let me ask you a question. You care about the Afghan people and not about your own countrymen? Of course, they lie and say they don't want to get out. They left. We're going to leave by August 31st, and that's it. And we, the best we could do was a success. But there's Americans. They're your people. You know what? Washington is not an Adam. They're not Adam. Isn't it I guess it's just a coincidence, right? Just a coincidence that the 100,000 Afghanis were brought to the United States. Where did they send them? Do you think they sent them to Martha's Vineyard where all the rich liberals live? No. You think they brought them to one of the posh, exclusive neighborhoods in California? Nope. You know where they put them exactly? In swing states and in areas in the swing states where the congressional units are swing units. They brought 100,000 people for one reason, to vote Democratic in the next election. And that's why it's a success for them. Who knows what diseases they're bringing? Who knows how many criminals are coming in this? This is their success while they left their people behind. Ay, vey, vey. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech olam shelo asani goy. Hashem made us an Adam. That we view every Jew, whatever it is, it's so important. And we care about every Jew. And the other Jew is hurting and we are hurting. And in Rosh Hashanah, even if everything's good with you, and you have an amazing year, we know one thing, there's so many Jews who it's not an amazing year. And if you are an Adam, if you notice in the liturgy of Rosh Hashanah, we keep talking about that in the Sanatay, we say, Adam, Yesod, Oimeya, for Adam. What we have to do on Rosh Hashanah is one thing. I want to be an Adam. I want to be a mensch. An Adam means I feel for every Jew. And in Rosh Hashanah, instead of only praying for myself and my family, pray for your whole family. Pray for all the Jews. Pray for Hashem. Pray for all the Jews that are far away from Yiddishkeit, who don't even know that it's Rosh Hashanah. Pray for Jews who have used COVID as a convenient excuse to no longer practice Judaism anymore. The Jewish people have been ripped asunder in so many ways. There are so many challenges of Achdus now in terms of COVID protocols, where I understand that we have certain members who are badgered by people of other shuls about what we're doing. This is not what Adam is all about. In Adam is we care about other people. We love other people. Yes, if we criticize, we do it in a loving way, in a way where it's productive. And the one who's suffering the most is Lo Tsar Le Aleph to the Pella Elyon. Hashem is having the most tsar that he has to bring this corona, and he can't stop it because people are not becoming an Adam. And this is all making us less than an Adam. Because remember, Adam starts with an Aleph. and then has the letters Dam, blood. When the Aleph, Hashem, is in the front, then you can be a mensch. There's no Aleph there. All you are is bloodthirsty people. And the President of the United States doesn't get to have blood on his hands as long as the Democrats have power. Rishoyim she'ein kamohu. There's a guy in 2008 when Biden and Kerry and all those other no goodness got lost in a snowstorm in Afghanistan, and they're in enemy lines. And the army can't get them out. And an Afghanis guy who knows the land, he got him out. And that Afghanis guy last week was told that, you know what? You can get on the plane, but your family, your wife and kids are not documented. Sorry, only you are not them. But 100,000 undocumented they can take. The guy who helped them be alive. They're not an autumn. You get it? All the politicians, they're not an autumn. They don't care how many of you died. They just want to get reelected. When are you going to get it through your heads who the autumn is? We have to look who are the autumns. Only the Jewish people is an autumn. Let me leave you with a story to show you what it means that a Jew is an autumn. It's a story that took place 2 Motzei Shabbos ago. True story. A Rav gets a knock on his door out of the blue on Motzei Shabbos, and one of his misfalim, we'll call him Ruvain. He was at the front door. Ruvain's aunt passed away on the West Coast. The aunt's instructions were that she should be cremated. Ruvain had 3 brothers who were religious, and they didn't know what to do. They didn't know how to approach things at all. You see, Ruvain's father was a Choser B'tshuva many years ago. His side of the family was entirely unfamiliar, totally as secular can be. They don't know what Tzelem Elokim means. They don't know anything. It was not a family that knew anything about the beauties of the customs of the Torah. So the 4 brothers, they wanted to show their sense of family and to help out. They just didn't know what to do and how to go about things. And that's why there was a knock on the rabbi's door. The rabbi got in touch with Rabbi Chanan Zon, who is the Queens and Manhattan Chevra Kedisha head. And he's a very big man around the world in terms of Chevra Kedisha. And he encouraged and instructed the brothers what to do. And he said at all costs, they have to proceed with ways of pleasantness and with Kiddush Hashem in mind. He also contacted the legendary Yankee mayor and asked for his man on the ground on the West Coast, and that man was a remarkable Chabad Shaliach. Isn't it interesting who's going to get involved in this story? Yeshivish people, Chabadniks, everybody. Everybody realized the only way to change the course what was about to happen was if the boys, the men, flew to the West Coast. And the 4 brothers boarded the first flight they could book from New York to the West Coast. They come to California. The daughters of the deceased aunt were overwhelmed by what they saw. They're not sitting still. They don't know anything about this. Here were their cousins from New York who had flown out to be with them. And all of this in the middle of the Delta variant flare-up. The brothers, their cousins, had purchased food. They consoled. They were figuratively shoulders to cry on. And interestingly enough, they had also purchased a 7-day Yortzeit candle for the Shiva house. And the aunt's daughters were curious about the candle. They asked when it was supposed to be lit. And the brothers answered that traditionally it's lit in the home after the burial. The door was opened. The daughters asked and inquired about more and more of the wonderful Jewish traditions of mourning. And, there were always delays in the cremation procedures. So the daughters initially agreed to change the plans, although the plans were for cremation. They said it would be best to go through the traditional route. So at that point, the brothers starting to feel good. Like they're saying to themselves, wow, we did it, But later they realized they were a little bit premature because on some level, maybe they were missing a deeper understanding of the Yad Hashem. And a short while later, one of the boyfriends of the women's daughters got involved. And so did some other family members. And this is where the monkey wrench goes in. The changes for the regular burial were undone, and the cremation arrangements went back into place. The brothers put their dilemma on the family chat. And Tehillim were recited by the four brothers, their two sisters in Eretz Yisrael, and by Kfarim of Tzaddikim in Eretz Yisrael. People from New York to Eretz Yisrael were davening. And a video appeared on the family chat of people davening for them at Kaver Rachel. You can imagine, Mama Rachel weint, Rachel mevakal baneha. Then a nace happened. The daughters were torn. Some family members were encouraging him to stick with the plan, stick with the plan. Let's go with the cremation. But this is all by phone, by the way. One of the daughters said to one of those well-intentioned family members who were encouraging cremation, they said, all I know is that they, the religious cousins, they flew from New York. Nobody else showed up. They cared to come and console us. You just have advice for us. You're not here. We will go the traditional route. But there were still hurdles. The Chabad Shliach made phone calls, and now is where the true Nisim happened. The aunt's original plans were discovered, some old papers, and she did arrange for Kfura and Tara, but something had come along and convinced her to change those plans. So the brothers remarked afterwards, it was clearly a message from Hashem, Ein od milvado. The hishtadlus that was done in going out helped make the change. But it was all Yad Hashem. But then another problem comes up. The cost of the halacha arrangements was some $6,000 more than the cremation costs. Even though most of it, including the plot, was already paid for with first pre-planning arrangement. But the cousins, where are you going to come up with the $6,000 more? The secular children aren't going to pay that. And the cousins spent way much more. Last-minute tickets from New York to LA are not cheap. Great substantial hurdle. Where are they going to get the extra money from? So they reached back to their Rav who gave the Batzi Shabbos knock too. And he had interesting advice. The Rav said, put the story on the shul chat. And they did. And you might think that $6,000 maybe was raised in a few days, but that wasn't the case. In fact, it was raised in less than 1 minute. Unbelievable. And she received a fine Jewish burial. This is a story of emunah, bitachon, inspiration, and proper hashkafas all wrapped into one. And it also tells us something else that's most inspiring to hear in the month of Elul. It demonstrates mi ka'amcha Yisrael, who is like the Jewish people. Yisrael nikroim Adam. We are the ones called Adam. And Hashem is showing it to you in national television, worldwide coverage. How the entire world is watching what's happening. And they're not an Adam. They don't care. All your leaders, they're not mentioned. Who are the Adams? Our great Gedolim are the Adams. We can become an Adam because we cannot forget that we are mamish, a piece of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We cannot forget that we are one limb. And the success of the Jewish people depends on each and every one of us, not leaving anyone behind, especially ourselves. And with this, I want to thank the Kehillah for Mamish being an Odom. It's 3 days before Rosh Hashanah. A few months ago, I pledged on behalf of the shul, we would raise $36,000 to support a farm in Eretz Yisrael during the Shemitah. Shemitah, where there's Yidden who live far away, quote unquote, we have nothing to do with them. And the great challenges that they have to go through in their Emunah and Bitachon. And the amount of money that needs to be raised, as if you saw that video I showed you, that the tzaddikim have said that although last Shemitah there were some 300,000 dunams that were keeping Shemitah, the Gedolim said it should be a goal for over 600,000 dunams to keep Shemitah. And when they were asked why, they said because that will be 51% of all the farms in Eretz Yisrael. And we know Rove, majority, is like everything. And we know Chazal say, Mashiach comes in the schus of Shemitah. When Klal Yisrael will keep Shemitah again, Mashiach has a good chance of coming again. And the goal of 51% of the farms. And there's one particular person in New York who had to underwrite this project, and he underwrote $43 million for this project. And when somebody asked him, you know, that's a lot of money. Aren't you afraid? What happens if it doesn't work out? How are you gonna pull that off? He says, isn't Mashiach worth it? For just $43 million, that's a bargain. Mi ka'amcha Yisrael. And therefore, our small, relatively small Westmount Shul, nearly 60 members came forth, and we did not raise $36,000. We raised over $40,000. And the extra money obviously is going to go for other farms that have not had all the support they need. And I thank all of you, and Hashem should look favorably about all of you who say, I feel I'm a partner in the mitzvah of Shemitah. Those who gave money, you're mamish, a partner. You're partner in the land. You're keeping Shemitah. We could never do that unless Kol Yisrael Arevim Zelozeh. There's a farmer by the name of Boaz in the south of Israel, not far from where the Arabs live, who's cultivating grapes and will not cultivate them for a year. And by us supporting his farm, we are keeping Shemitah only because Kol Yisrael Arevim Zelozeh. We give the money, he sticks his neck out. That's something we should all be proud of. We should be so proud. And now we're going to come to Rosh Hashanah. Let's feel that pride. Let's feel that pride when we're in shul. And we know not every one of our shul is in the shul, but we're all EREV for them. We're all responsible for them. We have to make sure they think about them in our tefillos. And in Mirz Hashem, if we incorporate that message, this Rosh Hashanah, this special Rosh Hashanah of Shemitah, we should be zoicha Mirz Hashem, that all of us, kulanu b'yachad, no matter who we are, the wood choppers, the wood carriers, we're able to see Eliyahu Navi should come and greet us at the end of this Shana Tova Masuka with the Mashiach B'mheira V'yameinu. Amen. Thank you for listening. Have a wonderful EREV Shabbos.